Good morning, welcome to Chatechesis. Nice to have your company here, getting ourselves set up here for camera work as well as audio work here on the microphone. Father Eamonn is my name. Nice to have you with us if you're joining us on Facebook Live and YouTube. A wave as always and a little thumbs up for you. Do like, share, follow and subscribe on all our social media to get the word out. Just click and share it and indeed drop a comment as well. And thanks indeed to all who do drop comments there and let us know that you are watching and listening in. Lovely to have you with us. And indeed, if you're watching back later on, feel free to drop a little comment in there as well. And you might have a thought or an idea, a suggestion, an inspiration, or that to share, or a direction in which our conversation in our chat moment here together might well wish to be pointed or directed as well. So thanks indeed for being part of it. As always, don't forget you can give a call here. We have help in the studio today. 08946722000 for your text and WhatsApp messages. 08946722000. Put it +353 in front of that. As always, if you're getting in touch with us from the north or from outside of Ireland, please do text and email us there, WhatsApp us as well. The email address is info@radiomaria.ie, and the landline, please do call us up 014-123-456. Doesn't get any more easier than that, I think, to remember the number. 014-123-456 or +353 again, 14123-456. So we do love to hear from you. And again, if you want to drop a line, the address here is St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22, and it's D22 or 7W2 if you'd like the error code, or 7W2, D22 or 7W2. And I think the way it works now, you could just put that on the envelope and it would find us. A bit like Google Maps now, if you're using Google Maps or on the sat-nav thingamies, you just put in the error code and it takes you straight there. It's quite amazing, the technology now. Everything is so digitized and made so convenient. I have a number of maps that I used to carry on in the car for years, and sure, who looks at a map anymore? When you've got a sat nav and you've got all these other things, you don't need to even memorize your way around at all. When you just can Google it and let the car. It's almost at the point now where the car will take you there itself. And I think there is technology, believe it or not, available that you can have a driverless car, and the car will take you to where you're going. Again, with things like 5G and the intensity of internet coverage and everything, cars can be programmed to take you where you want or where you will, without you having to drive. And you have those driverless trains and things in airports and so on. But it's a kind of a scary thought, I suppose, in its own way, that if the car can be remotely controlled, then it could take you to where you don't want to go, maybe. How do you take back control? Or could you be accidentally locked into your car, or deliberately locked into your car if somebody hacked into the system? I don't know. Or could a crash or an accident be arranged without your control as well? Again, I don't know. All these things, when you allow technology to encroach, it demands these questions. It's a bit like I'm mentioning that good idea if you want to listen to the radio here, you can get Alexa or Amazon Echo. These are voice-activated computers, really, that it's just a loudspeaker sitting on your table. It's connected to Wi-Fi in your house. You just tell it to put on Radio Maria Ireland and it'll play it for you right there, using Alexa as one of the software, I guess, packages that operates one of these things. Amazon Echo is the same. And you just speak to it and it does pretty much what you want it to do. And then, of course, there's the parodies and all these things. The interesting take, of course, always on the internet, you'll get twists and turns on these things. But the guy who's, he talks to his device in the house and it puts on everything for him in the morning. Then he heads off to the dentist and he gets an injection. And, of course, his voice is completely out of whack. And he just can't understand him, unintelligible. And the device he's stuck out in the rain because the device doesn't understand what he's trying to say to it anymore. Oh, sure, technology. So that's where we are with all of that. But indeed, it's true, the idea of having a remote control car. I remember somebody suggesting that We do a lot of interactive remote controlled things without even realizing, things like escalators, automatic doors. You go into the airport and the door opens automatically, or some of the shops and that as well. And the comedian was suggesting, if you're afraid of remote controlled cars and the danger they might pose, well then you should be equally afraid of remote controlled doors to shops and things. That maybe there should be two people, manning those doors. And the argument then went on, of course, that who's to say they will be fully awake and fully alert or fully sober at any given time, and who knows that the doors wouldn't, close on your nose and do some damage if just being done by people. There would be human error, in other words. But they do say to foul things up, to err is human, but to really foul things up demands a computer. So when they go wrong, it becomes a colossal nuisance, as we well know with all our technology here. So it's a mixed blessing, and again, as people of faith, I'll just take that to the next level. In relation to faith, we can use these as tools or instruments in our service, in our hands, as it were, for the good and for great good, and we do. And thanks be to God for the massive developments in technology and everything getting smaller and more compact and more efficient and all these other things. It's like the joke about the Japanese electronics company that was so successful, it moved into smaller premises. Such is the nature of technology, shrinking all the while, and so much so in scary modes too, that should cause us legitimate moral concern. If we can be injected with these things, or we can have an implant or something with a chip and all of these things, well, there are grounds for major questions as to the morality of that. And do we begin confusing then the machine with the person, or the utility of and the mechanics of the technology versus the value of the human person? And that's when we start entering into grey, if not murky, territory in terms of the morality of all of this. How much control do we concede to who and to what authority and by what authority? And to what level should we allow this to encroach upon us? I mean, again, we have this move towards a cashless society, a checkless society that's all done by your device now, your smartphone, and all very convenient and very handy. And that you can see the merit of it. But is there somebody in control of that? Do we relinquish some of the autonomy that we have and the authority that we have over our own personal goods and our own human person ourselves, our own physical person? These are pretty fundamental questions, and they are serious questions. It's not to be taken lightly, and we should, I think, ask all of those questions and exercise great caution and circumspection when it comes to how far do we take these advances, how much control, as I say, do we relinquish, and what are the ethical boundaries? I mean, is it not possible that in a situation where you have a technologically controlled society, that whoever pushes the levers and presses the buttons and powers all these things ends up with all the control? Is that possible? And if it is that we relinquish, as it were, our bank accounts, our ebb and flow of our income, we have done. So many things are automated now. Paychecks going straight into your account, and then direct debits and all these other things in and out of the account. And it all seems to be very remote from us. Whereas if you're handling cash, you have something physical in your hand, and you recognize maybe a little bit more easily the value of what it is we're trading with. And are we losing sight of some of that? So the answer is yes, but to what end? And is it serving us well or not? And again, I would be a little bit circumspect at times about some of that, and you can understand why people would be resistant to a technology that seems to be all pervasive. And does it damage our health? Again, I don't know, with all these radio waves and all these things flying around the place. I have no idea. I'm no expert in any of these things. But at the same time, I like to question and say, well, to what end, and how much am I willing to capitulate, if you like, to this growth in technology? And is it consuming us rather than we consuming it? What a great challenge. These are pretty huge challenges. And Pope Francis, it's marvellous, Pope Francis, all the while, his great love for the poor, for the vulnerable, for the weak. And Pope St. John Paul II actually was the very same. He was a great champion of the lesser well-off, the lesser entitled and so on. That those who are without surely demand our attention far more than the haves versus the have-nots, isn't it? That sometimes we get the priority a little bit skewed, that we're maybe so keen on advancing and pushing forward the wealthy and the technologically enabled and the well-educated. Are we seeing a growing gap between those and the poor and the needy and the suffering? And what price are we paying for that? Again, are we missing the human element? The sacredness of the human person, the dignity of every human person, and the inalienable rights that we share, and the responsibilities we have to one another and to the weak and the poor particularly. And has technology maybe distracted us away from that? Are we absorbed and consumed by all kinds of entertainment now that our minds are distracted, and we fail to see our neighbour and the person in need right next to us? Again, this idea I've always said of volunteering for something and doing something for somebody else to take us out of our little world and our own personal, maybe, universe, a little bit anyway, and look to others who might well have our own series of needs and problems that need a little bit of support towards as well. So if there's no one else, when our turn comes, maybe if it is that we're enjoying a certain amount of well-being at this time, our turn will inevitably come when we're in need of the help and support of others too. So what am I doing now? Well, I can, if I can, to help those in need, in order to build up that sort of kingdom, if you like, or that place where there is love and service of one another, that indeed there will be those in turn when my need arises as well. All these very, very far-reaching and searching. But that if we play our own individual part, I would say, begin with myself and my own daily ongoing conversion and attending to the needs of others, and again, awareness of all of these penetrating questions and thoughts and ideas and responsibilities too. So it's a very interesting time in which we live. The technology is certainly an enormous help and most extraordinary what can be done and achieved now. But there are a lot of moral questions which arise and which really challenge us in so many areas, and is worthy of a much longer, in-depth conversation, and indeed with somebody who's adept at this kind of, looking at this kind of material. There was one or two fabulous talks that we've played back for you a number of times. I'm sure they're available as our podcasts too. Whether they've made it across to our new website. Our new website is a work in progress, by the way, and we, even yesterday, just little steps forward again by way of organising and putting together our podcast. And we've quite, there's about I don't know what the number is now. The last count was 3,000 podcasts and some fabulous talks from the World Meeting of Families. And I'm thinking of those again in relation to technology and the challenges it poses in relation to family life and family living. And living in general, because we tend to be glued to our devices perhaps a little too much. So these questions and the dangers, particularly for younger minds and younger hearts, to be malformed or misdirected in relation to technology, that it takes a little bit of life experience maybe to understand the implications of these things more fully, and it takes expert guidance, I suppose, too, maybe to help plough away through these things. So we use them to the good, and you see this is the great interesting thing, that we couldn't possibly broadcast as we're broadcasting now were it not for this extraordinary technology. I never thought I'd be sitting in front of a camera or a microphone in a radio station in all my dreams, and was running away from these things for a long time, trying to avoid this kind of exposure. And yet to run away from it and hide is not the answer either. We have to try to embrace it and draw the good from it and maximize its potential for good, but see again that it's an instrument. It's only an instrument. And I'm at pains to mention that too when we go visiting parishes. We'll be heading up to Downpatrick now, please God, Saturday and Sunday. And please God to Sligo Cathedral the following weekend as well. So up to the northwest, from northeast to northwest, these coming weekends. But like I say, when I visit the parishes, I'm at pains to stress that this is an instrument. Radio Maria is a marvellous gift. And I won't say and cannot say, obviously, that it's the be-all and the end-all. It's the remedy of all remedies. No, but it's certainly a very potent and wonderful instrument to share with you and to converse with you. And again, I've no shame in repeating it time and time again. What makes the radio, for me especially, and what makes it for all of us, is the interaction that we enjoy. So like I say, the texts and the emails, the telephone calls, the letters, that back and that engagement we have with you at that social level. And it may just be that it's over the phone, it may be that it's by letter and so on, but it's that interaction that matters. So the technology is only the instrument. And like I say, it's a worthy instrument and a useful instrument. Like you need a saw and a hammer and a pliers and all these things to build, but it's in the hands of the user that they have the potential they have. And the same again is true for this technology. So it's good to reflect on that and just to see it and to try to be objective in relation to it, to see it as a thing rather than an end in itself. You know, we speak of something being a means to an end rather than the end. You know, that you don't see it as the thing to be aimed for in itself. It's simply just an instrument. And if it's an instrument, then it has its uses, but then we put it away. If it's an instrument, like a knife, you know, a knife is a very handy thing to butter bread, to cut up meat, I don't know, for food, but it can be used as a dangerous weapon too, to do harm. So it's again, and this is where the moral qualification enters in. It's true, it's a good moral principle to keep in mind that instruments like this, they're good in and of themselves. So this is when I'm speaking at length about this. It's not a condemnation. It's saying here's a great instrument, powerful instrument. If it can be used, it depends again on who wields the instrument and how it's used. And it is and can be used, and I hope here, using it to great good and to great effect, for the purpose in which it is intended, as a communications device. And communicating what is good and wholesome and true and worthy and beautiful and uplifting. But when it is used as an instrument to the converse, to peddle lies or half-truths, to be a critical weapon, let's say, again to undermine or to use and abuse the human person. And there's any number of ways in which that certainly takes place too, that an instrument can be used for ill. And in that case, it's not a good thing. But it's the people then, the person who uses the instrument, that qualifies the morality of a thing, whether again, and this is where, so in and of itself, instruments such as this, instruments such as hammers and saws and knives, are good and intended for good, but it's how they're used. And so we seek again to be, again, not to run away from these things because the instrument is being used badly by some people, but rather to embrace and say, well, here we are, we're trying to make use of the instrument for the good. And you likewise are using it for the good, if it is indeed that you're listening via any technological device right now. So it's just an interesting moral qualification that we keep mindful of. And I think the more people that use it for the good, there just can't be enough of good users. And people, by and large, indeed, are good and have good intent. And even those, in fact, and this will be an interesting one for the philosophy show later on today, at 2 o'clock, in terms of the morality, even those who seek to use instruments for evil more often than not, are probably doing so with good intent. In other words, to reach a good end, but not always a worthy end, and not always a worthy means. See, this is the thing. If it's used unworthily to reach a good end, that breaks another moral principle, that you cannot do evil in order to achieve good. That is a contradiction. That just doesn't make sense. So Robin Hood he used to rob from the rich in order to give to the poor. He's a mythical figure, of course, but he was doing evil, stealing, in order to do good. That's not how you do it. Robin had a much better use of his time if he approached the wealthy and said, look, I've got all these poor people that need help. Will you kindly come and give them a hand? And in fact, he would have been doing a greater good, because instead of disgruntling the rich from whom he robbed and, pitting them against him, and maybe the poor suffering more as a result, if he had got the rich on side to come and help the poor, they might have done even greater good again. See how that moral principle just falls apart if it is that we want to do good to achieve evil. Again, the Second World War is the other example that's often quoted, those awful atomic bombs that were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Grave evil. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives, innocent people, indiscriminately. But allegedly then the good is that it brought an end to the war, or helped to bring an end to the war. Sorry, again, you cannot justify evil in order to achieve a good end. And these are two very simple moral principles that are always worth keeping before us. The end not justifying the means, isn't that how we put it sometimes? So we cannot do evil to achieve good. And the other principle I was just saying a little earlier, that these instruments that we have in and of themselves are morally neutral. It is how we use them and implement them that qualifies whether they become morally good or morally evil. I suppose it's the agent, really, the person acting, that we determine is good or bad, good or evil. And we were getting into the realm of kind of moral philosophy there. So have a listen back to the two shows that have already taken place. Dr. Gavin Kerr, who's lecturing in Maynooth, and one of his students there, Niamh Palmer, has very kindly joined us, and it's very interesting to listen back to their philosophical conversation and bring in theology into it as well. So, if you had aspirations to third level philosophy, or that, just raising things a little bit in terms of this type of analysis of ethics and morality and truth, have a listen back to that. You will enjoy it. He puts it across very well. He's a very good teacher, Dr. Gavin Kerr. So it'll be on Facebook Live, hopefully, and YouTube Live as well, that you can watch into. Worth the listen. And don't forget, if you would like to send in a question or a challenge, something strikes you, hang on a second, how does that work exactly? Ask the question and pose it there. And interesting, I think last week he was chatting about how evil is defined by Aquinas as the privation of good, or is it Augustine maybe said that? The absence of good. So how can evil be said to actually exist, was one listener asked, if it is an absence or a privation or a want? We say that evil exists, but what do you mean it exists if it means it's the absence of something? The head starts to spin around in a circle. And hang on, how does that work again? And it'll be interesting to hear now what Gavin and Niamh, how they come up and answer that particular one. I think hopefully they'll address that later on. So there you are, just a little bit of a digression on the whole technological front, but again, it's just good to see these things are good, and they can be ordered to the good. It's like everything, really, to order these things to the good. Saint Scholastica today. She's an interesting saint. I was chatting a bit about her there during Holy Mass. Have a listen back to the Gospel and the homily there if you wish. And we just have a short little piece here. She was the sister of Saint Benedict, and the first Benedictine religious. And all that is known of her comes from the dialogues of Saint Gregory the Great. Her community was Plombariola, about 5 miles from Monte Cassino. Monte Cassino, of course, the famous Benedictine monastery, which was bombed, I think, and destroyed during the Second World War. there in Italy. I think was there a movie or two about that? But again, they were within range of each other. And Benedict and Scholastica used to meet once a year in a house at a distance from his monastery. And the famous story, on his last visit to her, she asked him in vain to stay longer to discuss the joys of heaven. And when he refused, he said, "Look, I've got to head back here." She prayed for rain to such effect that a violent thunderstorm prevented him from leaving. And so they spent the night as she had wished. So she prayed, asked for God to intervene in some way to prevent Benedict and the brothers from leaving. And it just chucked it down with rain. So he couldn't leave. And so they had a very profitable night in prayer and conversation. And she died just 3 days later and was buried in the tomb that Benedict had prepared for himself. It's a lovely story, that her strength, her prayer, and her just love of all things to do with God, brought about that lovely meeting between them. And Benedict apparently had a vision of her soul entering heaven shortly afterwards, and that he must have then seen the providence of spending that longer time together. Marvellous. Her relics were said to have been translated to Le Mans, where St. Benedict's went to Fleury, and feast day is today. That's all it says, really. But the Benedicts, as you know, our good friend Declan Kelleher, all things Benedictine we hear of, and other things too on a Sunday morning, and just keeping us mindful of the huge contribution of the rule of Saint Benedict to the monastic life in general. So it doesn't say that's all I get in my little book about Scholastica today. Not sure what she might be the patron saint of. Let me see. No, it doesn't tell me. No, it's like you get these saints who are a patron of something, maybe rain, I don't know, or whatever. It isn't there. So not to worry, that happens too. Very good. So nice to have your company today. Again, as I say, do get in touch with us. We might pause for a little piece of music. Connor is looking after me at the mixing desk again, so we'll check out a little piece of music. Excuse me. And why not please do get in touch with us. Nancy, thank you. You're watching in on Facebook too, and lights a candle for us and says some prayers for on our behalf too. Thanks a million. And Janine as well is listening from the US, up bright and early this hour of the morning, and especially for spreading the good word. And thanks a million for that, Janine, and glad that I'm your little ray of sunshine in the morning, as you say there, that Radio Maria is coming into your home and enlightening and guiding you today as well. So good. Let's take a little pause and we'll take a little piece of music. As always, again, do drop a comment there on Facebook or YouTube if you wish. Do telephone, and there's some volunteers in the studio today helping with the phone. 014 123 If it is that the phone is unmanned for some reason or into the evening, we're very glad to get your voice messages, and Mary was busy there going through the past voice messages there on the system, and that we seek to get back to you as well there too. So no, I'm not sure what piece of music we're going to have lined up. It's going to be a surprise for us there, Connor, so he's going to let us know shortly. So again, please do get in touch with us, and back very soon after this lovely piece of music. Conor, yeah, bringing me in for a landing there. Well done. So Greater Love is the name of that piece of music there, King's College Choir. Tara is monitoring very carefully and selecting carefully for us too, and trying to raise the musical bar a little bit for us here on Radio Maria Ireland as well. So now thanks for joining me here on this morning's Chatechesis. Some lovely feedback coming into us. And here's a nice message that came in from Midlands Prison. Recently got your channel here, and it's a great addition. I find it a breath of fresh air to listen to your radio station. God bless all who work there. Joseph. Now, it doesn't tell me whether Joseph is on the staff there at Midlands Prison or is one of the inmates, but thanks a million for that, Joseph. And just a big shout out to Jeanette, who's doing such great work. Jeanette was on for prayer this morning, you may have heard, was doing great work for us in just making contact with the prisons around the country, because we're on a digital channel, you see, on the TV, and I think I don't know if it's the case in all prisons, maybe it is, that they're allowed to have a television or access to a television with the Serview channels, and if they have, then they can access Radio Maria here. So delighted to hear that. And Jeanette sent me through just the details for some of the prisons. Midlands Prison would be different, a different prison from Portlaoise Prison there. But looking at them, there's Cork Prison, Arbor Hill, Castlereagh, Clover Hill, Mountjoy Women's Prison and Mountjoy for Men, Limerick, Lochran House, Portlaoise, Shelton Abbey, Wheatfield. That's in the Republic, and there's, I think, 4 prisons in the north of Ireland too. So we're looking at something like a capacity of upwards of 5,000 inmates in prison at any time. That's a large swathe of our community. And so we're, again, just making gentle invitations to our brothers and sisters in prison and through the chaplains, and indeed to the staff and the family members, of course, that Radio Maria can be a little voice, a little support to you in your situation. Indeed, you are as much part of our community as anyone else. And so the Lord has put it up to us in the scriptures, of course. When I was in prison, you came to see me. And so this is our way of coming to see you if you're listening in prison, and we're delighted to have your company. And if we can be any way of a prayer support for you and remembering you, we're very glad to do so. And connecting you, I suppose, with the outside world a little bit, maybe from that perspective being inside, and hoping indeed that we can be some consolation and some little uplift there. And it fulfills that little obligation we've been given, and which one of us, would not otherwise, what am I trying to think, that like how easy it is, that's what I'm driving at, for us to follow the law. And again, it's not to the way, not to make so much of a distinction maybe in our minds. I think is what I'm trying to arrive at, that there but for the grace of God, if you like, go any one of us. Who knows what it may be, family circumstances, social circumstances that may have led to criminal activity, or simply just rash behaviour of some kind, folly of one. I mean, I'm guilty of folly as much, I'm sure, maybe of anyone else. How easy it is to follow the law. And again, here are those in need, and there are our brothers and sisters and their families likewise, again, to offer some little support. So that's a lovely message to receive. So it's really encouraging to me that indeed we're being heard and listened to in prison. I don't know if I shared with you, we did get a fabulous book, we must get it translated into English, of letters from prisons in Italy, where Radio Maria Italy, of course, has been broadcasting for 40 years, I think, at this stage, coming up on that. And they put together a lovely book of testimonies of letters received from prisoners and published it. Excuse me. And it's just something I'd love to get translated and circulated. And who knows, maybe before too long we might also be able to produce our own little book of testimonies as well. So great to see that. So now thanks, Joan, as well, listening in on Facebook, and just want to say God gave you a beautiful, soothing, easy listening voice. Thank you. Lots of people say that. Thanks for that, Joan. And I'm very happy to, if it's a little gift or a talent that I've been blessed with, very happy to share it in abundance with you, coughing and spluttering my way through from time to time as well. So God bless you, she says, and all who work in Radio Maria. So thank you, Joan. We appreciate that very much. And let's see, I think Liam was in touch as well, and we were just chatting yesterday about the scripture, and we were just having a little editorial meeting to plan how we might again fill out and further enhance the opportunity we have for really good solid programming. And very mindful indeed that we could be doing more on sacred scripture. As I tell you, I might remind you really that we are doing a great deal already on sacred scripture by way of the office, by way of the readings each day and the homilies too. So we're not ignoring this by any means, but a more systematic approach to sacred scripture. So we kind of kicked the ball in a little bit yesterday, and it's sort of stirring the pot on it a little. The few of those strands I was thinking of too are certainly we had our little pro-life moment every Thursday, and it seems to just have sort of waned away a little bit. Aisling was looking after that in her time, and something that we need to resurrect, have a weekly pro-life slot at least. What were the other ones? Children's program. We'd love to do something with children. Now, we've been doing a little bit with schools, just kind of getting our toes in the water. But again, there's a lot of organising and a lot of gathering of resources together for that as well. And the Persecuted Church was the other one, Aid to the Church in Need, as you may remember, had a show with us for a good length of time. And again, it's sort of fallen by the wayside through no one's fault. But these are four very strong areas that, again, I just feel very sort of committed that we should be having regular conversations with you and sharings with you to keep everyone informed. The church is so badly persecuted around the world. Again, involving children and smaller children, let's say, by way of maybe prayer time or conversation. I'm sure a little short program for children. Primary school age, I'm thinking of there particularly. Let's see now. Scripture, of course, the other one, and the pro-life area. So we're just looking at these, and just the prison ministry actually was the other one. And Aidan had a nice little suggestion too, maybe to widen that whole area of coverage, let's say, into works of mercy. That obviously I was in prison and you came to see me is one of the list of the works of mercy. So maybe treating of the poor and those working with the poor, like Mary's Meals, for instance. Now it's lovely to feature Trish. She comes on and gives us a little update as the great work they're doing, feeding the poor in their millions, most extraordinary ministry. And there are so many other wonderful groups and societies and organisations in Ireland doing the same in so many ways. That, again, that we can be just thinking about and trying to formulate a way of sharing it on the radio. That makes it very interesting. And to know that there are heroic people by the new time. Again, fulfilling the very thing I'm so keen on is volunteering and offering their expertise and their capacity and ability to do something they're sort of passionate about in helping the poor, the elderly, the sick, the lonely. Things like Meals on Wheels. We've had a couple of emails lately from Alone. They do great support for the elderly likewise. This is kind of the thinking. This is the logic. So we've been given such a gift here, you see, to be able to try to put it to the service of such activity. And it builds up the whole community to know that, wow, let's look at all this mighty work that's going on. And just to bring such people to the microphone and let them tell their story and share some of the joys and some of the challenges that they have to confront and difficulties too. So anyway, we're planning and plotting and scheming all the time and looking how best can we put the resources that you give us to maximum use, to better use for you, and to guide and form you along that way as well. So certainly we're looking at the area of Scripture, and like I say, we've kind of kicked the ball in. I'm a great believer in Frank Duff's idea of symbolic action, that you kind of begin with a small step, and you take it to a small direction, and then another step presents itself, and then another, and then before you know it, you're on the path, you're on the journey, you're heading towards where it is you'd like to see it go, and then leaving lots of room for the Holy Spirit to guide and direct it. So I'm mindful there are lots of other good resources available online and all kinds of things we could tap into online very easily in relation to some of these questions. But the other side of that is that here on Radio Maria we have a particular charism and a gift that we bring to it. That you could replay podcasts till the cows come home, and there would be nice talks and everything else. You could pick and choose and so on. But you can get a podcast anytime you want, really. My interest and my passion here, and our charism, better still, on Radio Maria is for it to be live, for it to be interactive, and again, the social connection, do you know what I mean? It's not just a lecture. You could kind of give lectures all day long. This is why I love to receive texts and messages from you. Rather, it's interactive. It's an exchange. It's a living thing. Again, like going to Mass on the Sunday, why it's so important to go. It's a living faith we practice. Doing it from home and online is all well and good, but it's remote from the reality and the flesh and blood and the viscerality of our faith. It means interacting with people. Pope Francis' idea of the smell of the sheep, you kind of get stuck in, you get involved, you expend the energy in it. Again, why we love people to come and visit the studio, because you get a sense of it and you can't but kind of get the bug and see, there's something good here, there's something worthy, there's something I'd like to be involved in this. Pick me so that I can do something to help this, even if it's only something small. Let me be part of this. And again, this is the energy that we're looking to, that this radio station belongs to you, it's at your service, and we want it to just grow and build and enhance and fill out more fully, again, in your service and helping you along in your journey. But that can only be possible in the measure in which you also interact with us, whatever shape or form or way that may be. So I hope you can see that we're together on this. This isn't a solo run by any means. So thanks very much. I'll leave my thoughts there for today, if I may. I see the time is coming up to 12 o'clock. Please do stay with us now. We'll pray together our Angelus and our midday prayer.